Okay, first things first, let's check our fluid specifications for this vehicle. You can find those in your owner's manual or any shop software programs such as AllData, ShopKey, any of those. Be careful of getting them online. You have to make sure that you have not just that model vehicle, but that type of engine that is in your vehicle. Best way to identify that through the VIN number or by year, make, and model. We have a 2002 Toyota Sequoia Limited 4-wheel drive. Use this vehicle. It's going to bring us to our home page, our one search page. Right here is fluid capacities. Down under engine oil, we've got drain and refill with filter. It says 6.5 quarts of SAE 5W30. That's the number we're looking for right there. SAE 5W30. I looked in the owner's manual here. Our API service rating needs to be a minimum of SL. The oil we got today has an API rating of SN, which is above SL. We are up to specification. Another thing you can look up online that might help is your oil filter part numbers can be found on parts sites like Rock Auto. Earlier I pulled this up. These are the oil filters for this Toyota Sequoia. Oil filters keep on range of $5 to $6 at the parts store. You can see these are a lot cheaper online. So if you plan ahead, you can order these, save some money. If you know what brand your local parts stores carry, you can look up these part numbers and save yourself some time. Alright, now we know what type of oil, how much, we know what type of oil filter we need. We can get those supplies and then we can start our oil change. Here's our 5W30 motor oil, called for 6.5 quarts. This is our high mileage blend for our vehicle. Other things we got, here's our oil filter, drain plug gasket if necessary, always a good idea, and some gloves. After the vehicle's racked, we're going to go ahead and pop the hood. Locate our oil fill cap. Always going to be on our valve cover. In this case, on this side. Go ahead and remove our fill cover. And provide a little vent for air to enter as we drain. Stow this somewhere safe. Lower the hood and get ready to go in the air. Next step is going to be to locate our oil drain plug, which can be easier said than done sometimes. Heavy duty off-road vehicles like this oftentimes have skid plates to protect those parts, and that's going to cover our drain plug, so we got to remove these. Smaller passenger cars, there might be some noise insulation, but a lot of times we got to pull some plastic and metal panels off to even be able to see the oil pan. So go ahead and remove the skid plate. Alright, now we've got the skid plate removed. Next we can go ahead and locate our engine oil drain plug on our oil pan. It's going to be this right here. I want to be extra sure that that is the engine oil pan, because there is sometimes a drain plug on our transmission oil pan as well. We want to be extra sure that we're not draining the wrong component. Now we're going to go ahead and figure out what size socket or wrench we need for this. It's going to be a 14mm on this Toyota. Personally, I prefer sockets to wrenches. A lot of times these drain plugs have been seen better days, and our 6-sided socket is going to get the best grip on that so that we don't run the risk of rounding off that drain plug bolt head. Okay, Okay, now I've gone ahead and maneuvered our oil catch pan underneath our drain plug, getting ready to break that loose. We've got some rags standing by, catch any drips or small spills. We've got our tool selected, so we'll go ahead and break this drain plug loose. Get the socket on there nice and square. Pull it towards me. Nice and easy. Once it breaks loose, it should be in tight the rest of the way. So as I'm unscrewing this drain plug, I want to make sure I'm keeping gentle pressure against the oil pan, keeping this plug from popping out. And then once we get the plug completely unscrewed, I can go ahead and pull it out of the way. Any drips that we have on our hands, we want to make sure go ahead and get those with our rags that we're standing by down here. Don't want any oil spills or messes getting tracked across the shop. We'll go ahead and let that drain. Meanwhile, I can start locating our oil filter. Happens to be right here above us. A couple different oil filter removal tools we can choose from. This one right here attaches to a ratchet. Great for when you have open end clearance situation, kind of like this. This is the strap wrench style, which would also work in this situation, but a lot of times if we don't have that end clearance, this little tool will slide right in there. Go ahead and get your tool ready. We're ready to remove that oil filter. Okay, while our oil finishes draining, one thing we do want to check is the threads on our drain plug. Make sure they're in good condition, not damaged in any way. We also want to look at our drain plug gasket. Make sure it's there. Make sure that it's not scratched or smushed. A lot of manufacturers recommend that you change this gasket every oil change. So if that's the case, you're going to want to get that part at your auto parts store. Now that our oil is finished draining, that's one reason we want to make sure the engine is somewhat near operating temperature when we do oil changes. It'll get that oil to drain a little faster and a little bit more completely. When we get our drain plug back in, go ahead and get it up in the drain plug hole. We just want to gently start threading that in, hand tight. If it stops at any time, loosen up and start again. We want to make sure we don't cross thread that drain plug. Once we get it in hand tight, we're going to go ahead and tighten it up with our tool. If you're unsure of how tight to get the drain plug, go ahead and look up the torque specifications for the car, and we can use a torque wrench to tighten that down to the exact torque spec that it calls for. We want to avoid over tightening these. There's not much material for them to screw into, so it's very easy to strip the threads on the oil pan, or worse, possibly crack the thin sheet metal oil pan, which is going to cause a much more involved repair. So look up the specification of what that oil pan drain plug should be torqued to. We can use a repair information system like ShopKey or AllData, and I'm going to go ahead and search oil pan, and then I can pull up the specifications tab, and you can use Control F, oftentimes helps a lot here. Oil pan drain plug, over here is going to be 29 foot-pounds. Foot-pounds of my unit. I go down to oil pan drain plug. See that top one right there, 29 foot-pounds. I go and put the final torque on our drain plug. Got it set here at 29 foot-pounds. Come in and tighten it down. Good to go. Yeah, I've got my oil pan repositioned. Catch our drained oil from our filter. I go with the end tool on our ratchet. Got all this space here. And as I tighten, or loosen this, I should say, it's gonna grab that oil filter and start to twist it off. Just like that. These were installed properly at the last oil change. They shouldn't be too hard to remove. But if somebody went super Hulk on it, then you might have to get creative to get this thing to break loose. I can go ahead and finish it off by hand. You see some oil start to leak out of there. Again, we're just going to hold it up while we unscrew and then move it upside down into the oil pan. Now that we've got our old filter off, we're going to leave that in our drain pan. Let that drain overnight, and then we can dispose of it properly. If you have the other style oil filter, it's going to look something like this. And it will be in its own canister that has a lid that you have to remove with a tool. Pull this filter element out and then replace it. There's usually an O-ring that comes with that as well for the lid that you'll also have to change. Just leave the bad filter in the drain pan. We're going to come on over to our new oil filter. I'm going to take this guy out. And we're going to crack open our new oil and just get a little bit of clean oil. Enough to put a thin layer of lubrication on this little rubber seal. Just a little bit, not too much. Make tightening it on a lot harder if you get oil all over this filter. Just a little bit so it's shiny. Alright, we've got the seal on our new oil filter lubricated. We're now ready to install this. One last thing you want to check before you screw that new filter on. Come up here and check out our gasket sealing area. You want to make sure that there's no pieces of that old rubber filter left on here. It's going to create some problems. Nice and clean. We've got our seal lubricated. I'm going to go ahead and spin that on nice and easy. Righty tighty, should screw on no problem like our drain plug. And I'm going to wait for it to stop against the engine, just like that. Once it makes contact with the engine, we're going to go half a turn to one full turn more. Hand tight only though. We're not going to use the tool to reinstall our filter. So I've got it contacted. Now I'm going to go for a half a turn or one full turn. Just like that. Filter is now installed. We want to clean up any oil residue. Depending on where the filter is located, it's going to drain on different components. We want to make sure we get all that cleaned up before we send this car out. Okay, a couple final checks. Our oil filter is on and installed. Our drain plug is in and torqued. I can go ahead and remove our drain pan. Let's get it clear of the lift. Check for any tools. Got our bolts and impact for our skid plate that's going to go on next. And then we'll be ready to come down. And get our skid plate back up there in position. Bolts started by hand first, and then we'll go around and tighten them. sealed up or ready to come to the ground and fill her up. Filling engines with oil, you want to be extra careful to minimize spills. Don't fill up the funnel too much. Hold on to the funnel. If they get too full, they can tip over. Oil on the outside of an engine can cause smoking problems, smells, nasty things that we don't want to cause problems with on our customer's vehicle or our own vehicle. So nice and slow. We're going to want to put in the exact amount of oil that the engine calls for. Earlier we looked up and it was 6.5 quarts, so I'm going to pour this entire 5-quart jug in one small bottle and half of another 1-quart small bottle. Real careful here to keep it all in the funnel. I have a rag standing by so we can catch any drips. Next bottle. 5 quarts, here's number 6. We're going to do half of another bottle. On the side of our bottles is always a level gauge, both metric and standard. So our quarts. On this side, we're going to take it to that line right there. There's half a quart. That makes 6.5 quarts. You remove your funnel, be careful not to drip all over the engine. Let's catch it. Go ahead and reinstall our oil fill cap. For a start, we're going to check for leaks. Okay, oil fill cap's back on. We're going to go ahead and start the engine for a couple seconds. It's going to get the new filter filled with oil, at which point we can then check our final oil level and make sure it's exactly where we need to be. Top off if necessary. Just a couple seconds will be fine. Now we can go check our oil level. Alright, after starting the engine for a couple seconds, we'll go ahead and verify our oil level. We're going to pull our dipstick. We're going to wipe it off. Turn it down the tube. Get a fresh reading. Make sure it goes all the way down and fully seats in the tube. And now we can pull it out to see what our final oil level is. Clean engine oil, it can be tough sometimes. Right now we're showing up right about there. We can top this off with 1/3 of a quart. You can spin it around, try and catch the light at different angles. But we're looking for that line where the oil goes all the way across the dipstick. It's about there. Okay, make sure we wipe the dipstick off before we return it down the tube. Do a final check for any leaks. This vehicle's ready to go.